Galw aelodau I drefn yr eitem gyntaf yn Steffan Lewis.
First Minister make a statement on the future of Welsh supply chains.
Well, as a government, we are committed to nurturing supply chains across Wales. The future for Welsh supply chain companies is bright, and supporting Welsh businesses of all sizes to access major investment opportunities now and in the future is a key priority.
The Chartered Institute of Procurement and Suppliers recently concluded an extensive survey of businesses in the UK and on the continent in light of the EU referendum last year, and it found that nearly half of continental businesses expect to reduce their use of UK suppliers. And the survey also found that 65% of UK businesses have seen their supply chains become more expensive as a result of the weaker pound, and nearly a third are renegotiating some contracts. The Irish government, although of course Ireland's staying within the European Union, it has preempted the potential risk to supply chains as a result of Brexit. I wonder if the First Minister would agree to convene a summit of Welsh supply businesses and consider and explore the possibility of establishing a business loan scheme to support Welsh supply chains through the coming 2 years of great uncertainty to them.
Well, I think the first thing that we have to be clear about is what the nature of Brexit might look like. We're still no clear as to what that might mean. His party, and indeed ourselves as a government, have been very clear that it means full and unfettered access to the single market. Until we have an idea of what the future holds for Welsh businesses, then it would be difficult to give them the certainty that they require. That said, of course, it is hugely important that we work with our businesses in order to make sure that they're able to procure as many Welsh contracts, certainly, as possible, and to press on the UK government that they should not reduce the ability of Welsh businesses to do business in Europe in the future.
Hefyn David.
On the 8th of April, I and my colleagues Dawn Bowden and Rhiannon Passmore held a local summit of our own to discuss the Cardiff Capital Region deal, of which Anna Davis spoke very well. The event was attended by representatives of the local authority, local employers, but he was heckling me, reminding me to mention it, further and higher education and transport providers. One of the key themes to come out of the event was the importance of sharing social capital across local supply chains in the Northern Valleys, where collaboration between local firms is as important, if not more important, than competition between them. Would the First Minister therefore recognise that regional growth deals need to accept the importance of social capital, strong local procurement and the views of indigenous businesses if the capital deals are to be successful?
Well, we remain committed to delivering successful deals for all regions of Wales and to be a full partner in their development and delivery because, as the member has said, deals offer Wales and particularly the regions of Wales an opportunity to unlock additional Treasury funding to support interventions that can deliver sustainable economic growth. A lot of work needs to be done, of course, in order to get not just businesses, but businesses and local authorities to work together. But we know that is a path that offers the best outcome for all the communities of Wales.
Russell George.
First Minister, the Welsh Government's record to date in working to ensure that Welsh firms benefit as much as possible from public procurement issued in Wales is a poor one, I think. As of early 2016, of the 130 Welsh Government corporate procurement contracts awarded since 2011 and worth more than 500,000, just 53% were awarded to Welsh businesses. Now, nothing highlights this, of course, more than the Heads of the Valley Road project, which, despite being a capital project based in the heart of Wales, was awarded to an English-based contractor. So going forward, what can you do to ensure that Welsh companies benefit far more from public contracts offered in Wales in order to help build the supply chain here in Wales? We've seen a significant increase in the number of Welsh businesses who are accessing Welsh public sector contracts. The figure has gone from around about the 37% mark, if I remember, to over a half now, which is a great improvement.
Through initiatives such as Squid, for example, and the procurement initiative, we have ensured that Welsh businesses are better able to compete for contracts, and in particular that are able to work together with other firms in order to be successful in getting those contracts in the first place. Clearly, there will be some contracts that can only be delivered by particular contracts that can be delivered by companies with particular specialist skills, but nevertheless, we have seen a significant growth in the number of Welsh businesses who are successful in bidding for public sector contracts.
Cwestiwn 2, Mohammed Ashgar.
Presiding Officer, what plans does the Welsh Government have to review recycling targets for local authorities in Wales?
Well, we'll review recycling targets as part of the ongoing review of the Wales Waste Strategy, as well as evaluating our successful performance against current targets. This will include a consideration of targets to be set beyond 2025.
Thank you for the reply, Minister. But the successful is coming to this. The First Minister will be aware that his government set a target for local authority to recycle 58% of waste by 2016. In April, it was reported that 3 councils, Newport, Blaenau and Torwine, had all missed their target, but would avoid being fined also. Does the Welsh Government have plans to review recycling targets in Wales? And if they are to be increased, what incentive will there be for underperforming councils to improve, given the reluctance to use fines in Wales?
Well, I'm glad the members pointed out that by the end of 2016, the target was 58%. Indeed, we reached 60% as a result of the work that was done. The reality is that there's an inbuilt financial incentive for local authorities to recycle more because they can get more money for the products that they offer for recycling, and they don't have to pay as much in terms of the landfill tax. So those local authorities that don't meet the targets that have been set effectively are costing themselves more money. And that is the inbuilt incentive in terms of ensuring that we see more recycling. And I can say that we are certainly on course to exceed the 70% target that we have set for the year 2024 to 25.
Simon Thomas.
Diolch Llywydd. Mod i'n croesawu'r llwyddiant y maes algylchu, mae'n wedi dweud bod prif ffocws dylai fod erbyn hyn a llahau gwastraff yn y lle cyntaf, ac mae'n arbennig o boffidion i gofio bod pob darn o blastig a gweiwyd erioed yn dal mewn bodolaeth nawr, ond i bai bod wedi cael ei llosgi. Ac felly nad yw'n byd i edrych ar pethau fel cynllun dychwelyd blaen dal i weld sut allwn ni llahau plastig a polystyrene yn ymgylchu'r nid.
Mae fe'n broblem, i'n cytuno â hwnna. Dwi ddim yn credu bod hwn yn rhywbeth sy'n gallu cael ei ddatrys ar lefel Cymreig, o achos y ffaith bod siwr gymaint o bethau yn dod mewn i Gymru o wledydd eraill lle mae yna rheoliadau arall. Felly, i fi, y ffordd o sicrhau bod yna llai o wastraff yn cael ei greu yn y lle cynta, dyle hwnna cael ei ddelio ar lefel Ewropeaidd o lia, ond ar lefel byd eang, achos dyna'r ffordd wrth gwrs i sicrhau bod cynhyrchwyr mewn gwledydd eraill fel China sydd yn allforio siwgament o gynnyrch i wledydd Ewrop, bod nhw yn lleihau'r plastig maen nhw'n defnyddio mwyn sicrhau, wrth gwrs bod yna laif felly sy'n goffo gael ei ailgylchu yng Nghymru.
Caroline Jones.
First Minister, if we are to have any chance at all of reducing the amount of waste we send to landfill each year, recycling schemes should be made as easy as possible for homeowners to recycle. Unfortunately, local authorities appear to do the opposite. Bridgend, for example, have completely messed up the introduction of their new recycling scheme, which, in the words of the Council's Deputy Leader, has caused damage to the goodwill of the residents. The situation is now so bad that more than 40 councillors have taken the unprecedented step of writing to the Council's Leader to complain. First Minister, without the goodwill of residents, recycling schemes are doomed to failure. What can your government do to ensure that local authorities make it as simple as possible for the residents to recycle?
Well, as someone who lives in Bridgend, it is simple, and I've certainly recycled in the new system for the past 2 weeks without any problem at all. It's not massively different to the old system in reality. There have been instances where rubbish has not been collected as it should have been. That is something I know that the Council have been focused on, but I have to say that some of the people who are complaining are people who didn't want the new contract in the first place and who are not convinced that the current system is something that is worthwhile doing in any event. It doesn't matter for Bridgend Council, of course, to deal with any problems that arise, but I'm assured by them that they are doing so.
Cwestiynau nawr gan arweinwyr y pleidiau. Arweinydd Plaid Cymru, Lian Wood.
The negotiations for the UK to withdraw from the European Union have now begun, and the importance of those negotiations to Wales is beyond doubt. In the first quarter of 2017, our trade surplus with the EU increased to £2.5 billion. I'm of the view that the UK election a fortnight ago did not deliver a mandate to leave the single market. Do you agree?
The general election did not deliver a mandate for a hard Brexit, and as her party and my party have agreed, what we need is full and unfettered access to the single market. That view hasn't changed, and nor will it change in the future.
First Minister, on a visit to Airbus on Deeside, the company told me that there are two key priorities for the UK's future relationship with the European Union was firstly that there should be no tariffs on their goods and parts, and secondly that they should be able to benefit from freedom of movement of skilled workers. We've recently heard warnings from Airbus that a failure to meet these priorities could jeopardise jobs and business investment. You would want to guarantee those two priorities in line with our joint white paper, but at a CBI dinner on Friday, you said that membership of the single market would be incompatible with the EU referendum result. Will you now provide clarity? Are you ruling out membership of EFTA, and are you ruling out being a part of the EEA?
Well, I would remind the leader of Plaid Cymru what she's already agreed to as part of the white paper. The position is well understood. You cannot be a member of the single market without being a member of the EU. You can have access to the single market without being a member of the EU, as Norway has demonstrated and as the EFTA countries have demonstrated. I don't rule out membership of EFTA. I don't rule out membership of the EEA, for that matter, either, particularly in the short term. But if you are a member of the single market, it implies you have a say in the rules under which that market operates. The people of the UK have said they don't want to be part of the EU and therefore don't want to have a say in the way the market operates. That doesn't mean we can't have access to the single market. What's important for Airbus, and there are two issues for Airbus, first of all, is that they are able to sell in the single market, not just without tariff barriers, but non-tariff barriers, regulatory barriers as well. And secondly, work visas. She will know that there are people who travel back and forth between Toulouse, Filton and Broughton every day to work, and Airbus fear that those people may need visas, work visas, either for every visit or perhaps for a period of time in the future, which can't be good in terms of Broughton's position vis-à-vis its future. We need to make sure that visas are not required for those workers, and secondly, that there are no tariffs in terms of regulation or in terms of money that obstruct Airbus's full and unfettered access to the single market that exists at the moment.
First Minister, you were all over the place on this. Labour MPs are using the term single market membership. Chuka Amuna has said that access to the single market doesn't go far enough. Your Shadow Trade Secretary, Barry Gardner, has spoken of reformed membership of the single market. Membership. Now, there are implications for Airbus from both of those positions when it comes to freedom of movement, and for our other industries as well. We're once again seeing a multitude of positions on this inside the Labour Party and between the Welsh and the UK branches. First Minister, now that the formal negotiations are underway, what will you do to ensure that the final deal is one that works for Wales?
You know, I would sometimes hope that the leader of Plaid Cymru actually listens to my answer and then adapts the question she asks before she asks it. She was all over, she accuses me of being all over the place. Firstly, she said to me, you said you're not in favour of membership of the EU. Then she talked about EFTA, which is an entirely different organisation, consisting of 3 countries, Norway, Liechtenstein and Iceland. She herself, her party has already agreed that you can't be a member of the single market without being a member of the EU. That is what we agreed. I guess she remembers that. She accuses me of being all over the place. She's forgotten that. I don't want to get into a debate that is not needed between 2 parties who agree on the same thing. Namely, that we want to make sure that Welsh businesses have full and unfettered access to the single market. If you're a member of it, you have a say in its rules. You cannot have a say in its rules unless you're in the EU, and that matter has been resolved. What we need to do is to make sure we get the best deal, full and unfettered access to the single market for Welsh businesses, as she's already agreed to, that we understand that there is a difference between membership and access, but as far as Welsh businesses are concerned, we want to make sure that is an invisible difference, that we look at other models such as the EEA, such as EFTA, particularly in the transitional period, because there isn't going to be a deal by March 2019. Everybody sensible understands that. And it is a great shame that instead of contributing to the debate, she forgets what her own party's already agreed on.
That's absolutely right.
You weren't there. How many voices?
Arweinydd yr wrthblaid Andrew R.T. Davies.
Yeah. I feel as if I'm intruding on a bit of a domestic here, and we're seeing the coalition of chaos right in front of us, believe it or not. Hopefully, when we get to agenda item 4 this afternoon, you might give a bit more clarity to the position, First Minister, because if your partners don't understand it, what hope has anyone else got to understand it? But I would like to understand what the Welsh Government position is regarding the targets for the PISA examination results for 2021, because your Education Secretary said in the Children and Young People's Committee meeting last Thursday that the target that had been set by the previous government and your minister, a Labour minister, Hugh Lewis, of having a score of 500 in the 3 categories, was not her target. Can you give us some clarity as to what is the Welsh Government's target for the 2021 PISA results?
Well, achieving 500 in 2021 remains the Welsh Government's target. The Cabinet Secretary was correct in the sense that she didn't set the target because she wasn't the Minister at the time. But she is part of the government that is adhering to that target. But remember, the target is one diagnostic indicator amongst many others, such as GCSE performance and the closing of the attainment gap and school categorisation and ESTID inspections.
That is a slap down, in fairness, First Minister, to your Cabinet Secretary. You either have a target that the Department and the Cabinet Secretary work to and the education system here in Wales works to, and we welcome the target because it gives a direction of travel. But it is a fact that twice now a target has been disowned by successive Cabinet Secretaries on education here in your government. Obviously, Leighton Andrews' target of being in the top 20 by 2015, and then on Thursday, the target of having 500 in the 3 categories by 2021 was disowned by the Cabinet Secretary. So can you tell me how in this disjointed government can educationalists, parents and pupils have any confidence that by 2021 we will see this government hitting that target and delivering the improvements we want to see in education? The target remains. We'll continue to invest in education. We will not have grammar schools in Wales, nor will we reduce education spending as his party has advocated for many years. Is that it? Is that the answer, the sum total of your answer? So you've got you saying one thing, that a target exists. You've got the Cabinet Secretary confirming in front of a scrutiny committee of this Assembly that it is not her target. Who's taking ownership of education here in Wales? Yes. Is it any wonder it is such a complete shambles under your leadership? Again, I ask you, will you commit to a roadmap of how the education system here in Wales will hit your target in 2021 or the Cabinet Secretary's ambition for where she wants education to be? You can't have 2 targets, First Minister.
Well, let me say for the 3rd time, achieving 500 in 2021 remains the Welsh Government's target. The Cabinet Secretary is making a statement of fact that she wasn't the Minister in place at the time the target was set, but the target is the Government's target. I mean, he talks about coalition of chaos and a shambles. I see that Ruth Davidson, his Scottish colleague, is allowed into UK Cabinet meetings. He's banned. He's banned. I mean, how much humiliation can one man take? He was replaced for the leaders' debates in the election. How much humiliation can one man take? He actually allowed himself to be trampled over by Theresa May, who came to the Welsh Conservative Manifesto launch, elbowed him out of the way, banned him from coming to the launch, and then made a speech that turned the election round in our favour. So thanks very much for that. When we hear the word shambles, we can take no lessons from the experts who sit on the benches opposite.
Arweinydd Grŵp UKIP, Neil Hamilton.
I'm sure the First Minister, like me, is looking on with envy at the Democratic Unionists in Northern Ireland using their muscle in the House of Commons to extort the best possible deal in the interests of the people of Northern Ireland. And instead of refighting the last war, as the leader of Plaid Cymru seems intent on doing, wouldn't it be better for Plaid Cymru members in the House of Commons to use their pivotal position to get the best possible deal for Wales by increasing the size of our block grant or any one of the numerous things that we want, which would improve the life of the Welsh people?
As any party to extort money, as the leader of UKIP put it, but it is right to say that the UK government must listen. It does not have a mandate for the kind of Brexit that it wished. It failed to achieve that in the election, and now is the time for them to listen to sensible voices in order that there should be a sensible Brexit that works for the people of Wales, the people of Britain, and particularly for businesses and jobs.
Well, I'm sure we'll explore this point further later on this afternoon in the statement on the government's paper on Brexit. I want to move to another issue. As a result of the dreadful fire in Kensington and the terrible loss of life that was suffered there, is it not rather undesirable for the leader of the opposition, Jeremy Corbyn, to try to weaponise this as an issue and to incite people to occupy private property in order to house those who have been dispossessed? It is a very dangerous situation indeed for politicians in positions of responsibility to use such things. We know that there are certain important members of the Labour Party who believe that insurrection is an acceptable political tool. And John McDonnell many times has said that parliamentary democracy is only one option, and that the picket lines and the streets are the places where the real political battles can be fought. So does the First Minister agree with me that it would be most unfortunate if the Labour Party were to perpetuate this kind of rhetoric?
I'm afraid the leader of UKIP exposes a complete lack of humanity, I have to say. People have died here. People have died. Jeremy Corbyn, as an MP for the local area, went to visit people. He went to comfort many people who were his constituents, and he expressed the anger of many who felt that at the time they weren't being given sufficient support, whether it was by local government or central government. I make no comment on that because I think this week it's hugely important to focus on the fact that people have died, and to focus on the fact that it's hugely important that we learn the lessons of what happened in order to make sure that it doesn't happen again. That is the message of this week, not a cheap political point that he's trying to score.
Well, it's very far from a cheap political point. I was quoting from one of our national newspapers where the headline is "Let Inferno victims seize empty homes," says Corbyn. He's the one who said it. I have no objection, obviously, to Jeremy Corbyn articulating the views of people, particularly those of his constituents. We all do that. But in these highly charged situations, it is very dangerous indeed for rhetoric of that kind to be used when sobriety in the way that we express ourselves is to be desired. And to attempt to make political capital out of this in that way, I think, is very undesirable indeed.
He is indeed right to say that sobriety is needed. It's a shame he didn't follow his own advice, I have to say. He quotes from a national newspaper. Well, as we all know, the papers are always correct about everything, and he has past experience of such things. He has gravely misjudged the mood, I believe, of our nation of Wales and the UK this afternoon. He has gravely misjudged the mood of this chamber, I believe, and he must reflect, as somebody who has been in politics for many years, on the comments that he has made, and reflect as to whether, in fact, the comments that he has made reflects the humanity that we share in this chamber, because I don't believe that they do.
Cwestiwn 3, Paul Davies.
Diolch. Beth mae Llywodraeth Cymru yn ei wneud i hyrwyddo Sir Benfro fel cyrchfan dwristiaeth?
Mae blwyddyn chwedlau 2017 yn rhoi cyfle i ni adeiladu ar ôl hanfodol twristiaeth yn economi Sir Benfro, ac mae strategaeth dwristiaeth Llywodraeth Cymru yn nodi ein blaenoriaethau ar gyfer Cymru gyfan.
Nawr, mae Llywodraeth Cymru wedi clusnodi'r flwyddyn hon wrth gwrs yn flwyddyn y chwedle, ac yn sicr mae gan Sir Benfro ei chyfran deg o hanes ddiwylliannol sydd wrth gwrs yn cynnwys asedau fel Eglwys Gadeiriol Tuddewi a Castell Henllys i enwi ond ychydig. Nawr, mae'n hanfodol bod pob rhan o Gymru yn derbyn ei cyfran deg o gyllid i wir ddathlu blwyddyn y chwedle. Felly, allech chi ddweud wrthyn ni siwt i chi fel Llywodraeth yn ariannol wedi cyfnogi bob rhan o Gymru a sicrhau fod pob rhan o Gymru yn cael y chwarae teg maent yn ei heiddi, ac enghraifft, faint o gefnogaeth eich chi wedi ei roi Sir Benfro yn sgil y fenter benodol hyn?
Wel, yn gyntaf, gwrs y cronfa twristiaeth ynglyn â 2017, mae'n arian wedi cael ei roi i'r Pollinator Trail project yn Dr Byner's Bug Farm, arian wedi cael ei roi i TYF Limited ynglyn â Sup Kids Wales project, arian wedi cael ei roi i Seren Collections ynglyn â'r Welsh Roots project yn ardal Narberth, yn fwy eang arian i'r ymddiriedlaethau y bywyd y gwyllt ynglyn â'i prosiectau nhw, ac wrth gwrs prosiectau eraill yn Sir Benfro. Ac wrth gwrs ni'n gefnogol iawn o'r byd gan diddewi ynglyn â dinas ddiwylliant y Deyrnas Unedig yn 2021. Ni'n gefnogol iawn o'r byd hynny fel, ni'n gefnogol iawn o'r byd Abertawe. Ac wrth gwrs, mi'n wedi dweud bod pa wedi bod, bod argraff diddewi ynglyn â'r byd maen nhw wedi dod i mewn wedi bod yn un da dros ben.
Simon Thomas.
Diolch Llywydd. O'n i'n gweld bod tre Penfro wedi codi cerflun newydd i Harry Saethfed, ac wrth gwrs mae'n ymgais i denu twristiaeth ac adlewyrchu hanes clos y teulu hwnnw gyda tre Penfro. Heddi, dwi wedi cynnal arddangosfa yn y cynulliad o'r cerflun arall sydd yn gobeithio cael ei sefydlu yn Sir Benfro, cerflun o Chelsea Manning, cymeriad arall a gath i magu a'i haddysgu yn Sir Benfro, ac sydd wedi yn sicr dylanwadu yn drwm iawn ar y byd sy'n dyn ni byw ynddo hyn y byd. Fedr y Llywodraeth, fedr y Prif Weinidog dweud, beth mae Llywodraeth yn wneud i hybu celf cyhoeddus yn gyffredinol a'r ymdeimlad o gelf cyhoeddus fel fan o twristiaeth ond fel fan o adlewyrchu holl hanes ni fel cenedl, ac a bydd y Llywodraeth yn gallu edrych ar y bwriad yma i codi cerflun i Chelsea Marling yn Sir Benfro i gefnogi hi.
Wel, mae'n ofalus wrth gwrs ynglyn â cerflunau, achos ni'n cael llawer o geisiau ynglyn â chefnogi cerflunau ar draws Cymru, a mae'n holl bwysig wrth gwrs bod unrhyw gerflun a digon o gefnogaeth lleol mwyn bod y cerflun hynny'n gallu symud ymlaen. Ond i yn deall wrth gwrs faint mor bwysig mae pethau gweledigol ynglyn â rhoi neges i bobl, ac wrth gwrs oedd yna'n wir ynglyn â'r arddangosfa oedd yn Castell Carnarfon, sef y ffenest wylo, y weeping window, oedd yn dangos yn bwerus iawn beth oedd effaith y rhyfel cyntaf, nid dim ond ar gymunedau lleol, ond wrth gwrs ar hynna a chafodd i lladd yna.
Jenny Rathbone.
I too visited the exhibition of the sculpture of the proposed sculpture of Chelsea Manning. Would the First Secretary agree with me that a sculpture of Chelsea Manning, who must be one of the most famous sons and daughters of Haverfordwest, would indeed increase tourism in Pembrokeshire?
Well, these are matters ultimately for the community and town councils and for the local authority to determine whether they'd want to give support to this sculpture or any other.
Cwestiwn 4, Darren Miller.
Diolch, Llywydd. What action is the Welsh Government taking to improve the lives of older people in Wales?
Well, Taking Wales Forward contains a range of actions to improve the health and well-being of older people, focusing on timely interventions and effective partnership working. For example, we're investing in initiatives for older people to maintain their independence and remain at home through the Integrated Care Fund.
Thank you for that answer, First Minister, but one of the things which you failed to mention was the increasing isolation which is being faced by many older people in Wales. It's estimated that around 75,000 older people across the country are reported as being very lonely, and that loneliness can have the same sort of impact as smoking 15 cigarettes per day on people's health. And I wonder whether you will join me in supporting Age Cymru's campaign on loneliness, No One Should Have No One, and what work the Welsh Government is doing to support people like Jill Stafford from Abergele, my own constituency, who's widowed, she takes care of her disabled son, and she told Age Cymru that she takes the bus just so that she can get out and actually speak to somebody and have a conversation. So what action are you taking to support people like Jill and many others who are facing that sort of isolation and loneliness?
Well, we look to work with all third sector organisations who do so much work in helping older people. Remember, it's right to say that isolation and loneliness is a particular issue, and particularly in these days when families have moved away. And it does have a detrimental effect, not just on people's mental health, or it seems on their physical health as well. And we do want to work with Age Cymru. I commend what Age Cymru are doing to ensure that isolation firstly is recognised as a problem, and secondly that solutions are found to that problem.
Lynn Neagle.
Thank you, Chairwydd. One of the things that we can do to improve the lives of older people is ensure that our dementia strategy is ambitious and genuinely life-changing. As you know, the Cabinet Secretary is currently considering the very large number of responses that the Government has received on this. But I believe this is very much a matter for the whole government, particularly as I believe it will need extra resource in order to be implemented effectively. What assurances can you give that this will be a priority for you and that when we have the final dementia strategy, it will be as transformational as we all want to see?
Well, we are committed, of course, to making Wales a dementia-friendly country and, of course, to publish the first National Dementia Strategic Action Plan for Wales. It will be published later this year. It will set out the key actions with ambitious measures to be delivered by the Welsh Government and external partners to support people affected by dementia. And, of course, they will need, as part of that plan, to provide the resource that is required to enable it to succeed.
Caroline Jones.
Diolch, Llywydd. First Minister, many of our older people are being targeted and fall victim to scammers who prey on their vulnerability to defraud them of their life savings. I recently helped a constituent who was being targeted, and I have to say the support from South Wales Police was outstanding. Unfortunately, not everyone gets this support. What more can the Welsh Government do to protect and educate older people about the scams and how to avoid falling victim to these scammers?
Well, no cold calling zones are part of it, but of course they naturally can't affect scams that emerge online or by telephone. I have seen local authorities, Bridgen is one example, that have run very successful campaigns through their trading standards departments to inform people of what scams can look like, and they can be very effective. And that campaign was very effective, I saw it myself, in Bridgen. And I think it's important that local authorities learn from each other to see what they can do to protect people from scams that aren't detectable through methods such as no cold calling zones.
Question 5, Nathan Gill.
Will the First Minister make a statement on the future of devolution in Wales?
It will continue to be strengthened.
Short and sweet, thank you. First Minister, you may be aware that the First Minister of Northern Ireland is in favour of abolishing air passenger duty to help air passengers support growth, jobs and cut costs from businesses. Given the Scottish Government has now used its newly devolved power and brought in its air departure tax bill as a replacement for air passenger duty, and has committed to reducing it from 2018, what are you going to do to ensure air passenger duty is devolved? And once it is devolved, what will you do with it?
Well, I mean, the First Minister of Northern Ireland isn't in place at the moment, but hopefully soon. But he will surely know that this is something that we have argued ad nauseam for it to be devolved. There is no reason why it should be devolved in Northern Ireland, devolved in Scotland, but not devolved in Wales. What would we do with it? We would certainly look at reducing or removing it for long haul, because we know that Cardiff Airport is particularly well placed for long haul passenger flights, but the UK Government has resolutely refused to devolve it to us, despite the fact it's devolved to Scotland. There is no reason for this. There is no rationale for this. There is no fairness in this, and certainly it's something that the Conservatives in this chamber have not been particularly vocal about in the last few weeks or months.
Dawn Bowden.
Llywydd, and a further positive development, First Minister, of devolution is the right to determine the conduct of our own elections here in Wales. And during the general election a couple of weeks ago, we witnessed a significant increase in the number of young people both registering to vote and apparently unprecedented high turnout amongst that group. And if pundits are to be believed, this did benefit Labour in many parts of the UK, as we saw the extraordinary results in places like Kensington and Canterbury and even Cardiff North, with young people taking a stance against hard Brexit and austerity. Do you agree with me, First Minister, that this engagement by young people in the political process is to be greatly welcomed and lends support to arguments for extending the voting age to 16 when we get the option to do that here in Wales?
Well, I'm personally in favour of extending the voting age to 16. I fail to see why, if it's good for Scotland in one referendum, it can't therefore apply across every election, bluntly. There's no rationale for doing it for one vote, but not for others. For many years in this chamber, politicians of all parties have wrestled with how we get more young people engaged in politics, fearing that they don't vote. We saw lots of them voting in droves at the general election at levels I'd not seen before, particularly in the morning. In my local polling station, it was very, very noticeable. I certainly want to see that trend continuing, because it's hugely important that voting isn't seen as something you do when you get into middle age.
Nick Ramsey.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First, Minister, I'm happy to be vocal in favour of the devolution of air passenger duty to this Assembly. I'm sorry if you haven't quite heard our calls on that over the last few weeks and months, but certainly that is our position. Nathan Gill in his question was right to refer to tax devolution as the next big development in devolution within Wales, and indeed in the other devolved parts of the UK as well. The deadline when UK stamp duty and landfill disposal tax are to be replaced with Welsh taxes is fast approaching in April 2018, and then with income tax partially in 2019. First Minister, one of the key arguments in favour of tax devolution has been increased accountability, but this relies on public awareness of where that responsibility lies. Do you agree with me that there is still a lack of awareness amongst large sections of the Welsh electorate out there, certainly the people that I speak to, and that's not good in the medium and long term for that accountability? So would you agree to look at ways that we can have a speedy awareness raising campaign over the months and years ahead as taxes are devolved to Wales, so that people in Wales can fully understand what taxes are being raised here, what's being raised in the UK, and how we can move forward together?
I could mischievously say he used the word wasted in the UK, but he meant raised, I know that. He makes a good point. I mean, it's hugely important that people understand what happens here, and there will be a communications plan in place to inform people of what is going to happen next year and indeed the year after. Hugely important that's done, not just via the traditional media either. We saw at the general election that media such as Facebook were probably more powerful than the tabloid newspapers for the first time ever. So a wide variety of media will be used in order to convey the message.
Cwestiwn 6, Neil Hamilton.
Will the First Minister make a statement on oncology provision in Mid and West Wales?
Well, Powys Teaching Health Board and Hywel Dda University Health Board are both committed to providing the best quality and timely cancer care to their respective populations.
I thank the First Minister for that reply. Will he join me in congratulating Ellie Neville, who's aged 9 years old and has raised £109,500 for the support of work in Ward 10 in Withybush Hospital, where her father was treated for cancer? And although I acknowledge that the Welsh Government has been doing a great deal to try to reduce waiting times in hospitals for cancer treatment, we're still missing the 62-day target by quite a bit. And that produces inevitable problems, like my other constituent, whose wife is battling cancer for the second time and has had her application for treatment rejected both by the NHS in Wales and by London specialists, and has gone to be treated privately. And instead of being given no hope, as she was by the NHS in Wales, has been given the information now that her cancer is capable of being treated. I know that this is an inevitable problem with limited resources, but if we can provide the resources which are needed to treat all such sad cases, we're never going to be faced with these difficult decisions in the first place, which is going to be to everybody's advantage. So can the First Minister perhaps give us a forward view of what he hopes his government will be able to achieve in relation to cutting these waiting times and treatment decisions for cancer in the coming years of this Assembly?
Well, three things. First of all, in Powys, for example, performance against the 62-day pathway has been 100%. On 5 occasions in the last 12 months. In Hywel Dda, more than 90% of patients on the 62-day pathway were seen within target. It's been above 90% on 6 occasions in the past 12 months. With regard to his constituent's case, it's very difficult for me to comment without knowing more about it. He's welcome, of course, to write on his constituent's behalf if he feels that that is appropriate. Ellie I've met, so I know how enthusiastic and energetic she is, and she's a great credit to her parents and indeed to Pembrokeshire and to Wales.
Angela Burns.
Presiding Officer. First Minister, Radium-223 is a vital tool in fighting stage 4 prostate cancer. It is NICE approved and has been implemented, I think, via the new treatment fund so far in North Wales. However, there is real drag here in the south. Neither Velindre Hospital nor Singleton are yet ready to offer this. It is a nuclear medicine, so it does require particular setups. However, I am told that when and if Velindre are able to offer it, it will be then available to the people in South East Wales, but not able to take on board patients that will be coming up from Mid and West Wales. And of course, I'm deeply concerned about that because a significant number of my constituents also suffer from prostate cancer. And at the moment, everyone in South Wales has to go to Bristol to have this treatment that doesn't save a life, but it prolongs a life. And if it's your life, I'm sure that's beyond important. Could you please, First Minister, review this? Could you look at how North Wales have managed to implement this very vital strand of medicine, why it's not happening in South Wales, what we can do to make sure that Velindre and or Singleton get the opportunity to offer it, and that when it is here in South Wales, it is offered equitably to every single constituent in Wales, no matter where they live.
There will be no question of people not being offered a treatment in one part of Wales if it's available in other parts of Wales via the new treatments fund. That's what the fund is designed to eradicate, the postcode lottery. Implementation of the fund is going well, but it's not as consistent as I want it to be at the moment. Instructions have been given by the Cabinet Secretary to the health boards that he expects the situation to be consistent, certainly by the end of the summer, and then we will be at the point where the postcode lottery has been completely eradicated. It's on the way to that happening now, but the health boards have been told very clearly that this is something that the government will see done.
Question 7, Lee Waters.
What assessment has the First Minister made of the Innovation Wales strategy?
Well, it was published in 2013 after wide public consultation. It made Wales an early adopter of the EU's smart specialisation approach to innovation and is regularly referenced by the Independent Innovation Advisory Council for Wales.
Thank you, First Minister. The market disruption that's accompanying what's widely called the Fourth Industrial Revolution does give us an opportunity to reimagine the Welsh economy and make it more resilient to the challenges being unleashed by global forces. The current Innovation Wales strategy does need updating and it does need greater ambition in the face of this. Would the First Minister agree to a radical review at where future opportunities lie, looking particularly at emerging markets and not just existing ones, and looking beyond infrastructure investment and concentrating on more intangible ways of boosting growth in this vital area?
Well, regular reviews are important because we know that technology changes so quickly that things can move on at a rapid rate. And when we talk about Innovation 4.0, that would have been unknown in 2012, for example. So he is right that there need to be reviews. He is right that we need to look at new ways of creating jobs. I have to say that infrastructure is important, although we must define infrastructure in the most broad way possible, and that means, for example, including, as I always have done, broadband in infrastructure. That's a way of ensuring that jobs can remain, for example, in rural communities where otherwise they would have disappeared. But certainly, as a government, we are committed to regularly reviewing Innovation Wales in order to make sure that the plan is as up to date as it can be.
Mark Reckless.
Would the First Minister reconsider how the Innovation Wales strategy supports a digital cluster in South East Wales, and in particular review what more could be done to support cross-border research and development, given the increasing importance of the Bristol economy in digital technology?
Well, clusters tend to emerge in those areas where there are already skills to support them, and also where there are already businesses that exist in that area. That doesn't mean, of course, they can't be created elsewhere, but they are more difficult to create in areas where those skills are not as available. But nevertheless, we would want to ensure that the clusters that are created are sustainable, that they are specialised, and of course we promote cross-border working. Indeed, we promote working across Europe and across the world, because in that way, of course, we can tap into the best research and also the best advice as we look to develop the Welsh economy.
Adam Price.
Mae yna ddwy adroddiad wedi bod ger bron Weinidogion ers dros blwyddyn nawr, fi'n credu, gan yr athro Kevin Morgan ac eraill yn awgrymu creu corff arloesedd cenedlaethol i Gymru yn debyg i'r hyn sydd gan y gwledydd Sgandinafaidd. Nawr, fi'n deall mae'r awgrym nawr sy'n cael ei ledu yw bod arloesedd yn hytrach yn cael ei roi fel cyfrifoldeb i'r corff addysg trydyddol newydd. Y peryg gyda hynny, wrth gwrs, yw bod y dimensiwn addysg uwch yn cael ei briod le, ond hynny ar drail y math o materion economaidd ehangach oedd Lee Waters yn cyfeirio ato fe.
Na, mae rhaid sicrhau bod yna gydbwysedd. Ni'n gwybod bod sgiliau yn y byd addysg uwch yn holl bwysig, yn ymwedig er enghraifft gyda Wylfa Newydd, ac hefyd wrth gwrs mae addysg bellach yn bwysig hefyd, mwyn bod y sgiliau ar gael sgiliau ymarferol a gael gan bobl mwyn bod nhw'n gallu cael swyddi. So, ni yn deall bod y cydbwysedd hynny yn bwysig, ac wrth gwrs bydd hwn yn rhan o'r ffordd i'n ystyried hwn yn y pen draw.
Cwestiwn 8, Vicky Howells.
Diolch, Llywydd. Will the First Minister make a statement on Welsh Government priorities for increasing public transport services in the Cynon Valley?
Well, the National Transport Finance Plan, published in 2015, sets out the investment for transport and infrastructure and services for 2015 to 20 across all parts of Wales.
First Minister, a number of constituents have recently contacted me about the inadequacy of public transport links between the Cynon Valley and Cardiff on Sundays, with, for example, infrequent services making it difficult for them to access employment opportunities both within the capital and simply further down the Cynon Valley itself. Under the South Wales Metro or any future revised rail franchise, how can we make sure that this is not the case and that there are appropriate opportunities to use public transport on Sundays?
It's hugely important that we start to think of Sunday as a day that is not exactly like any other day, of course, but similar in terms of people's work patterns. We are no longer a Sabbatarian nation, and people do travel on Sundays, and quite often the public transport networks don't reflect that. It is something that we will reflect on as part of the franchise negotiations. It's hugely important that people are able to travel to work on a Sunday, as many people do now work, particularly in the retail sector, on a Sunday. So this is something that we will consider as part of the rollout of the Metro and as part of the franchise.
David Melding.
First Minister, the frequency and reliability of services is crucial, and in terms of Arriva services, I really think that we need to see a dramatic improvement, and such practices as cancelling services or stopping a service halfway up the valley. So if you want to get to Aberdeen, it stops in Mountain Ash, and you have to get off and wait for the next train. These are really important tests of a service, and I do not think that sort of service is acceptable.
It's hugely important that people are able to travel on a reliable service and in comfort. There are many occasions where members have drawn attention to a breakdown in that service over the years. From next year, of course, it is the responsibility of the Welsh Government, and we accept that. He should count himself lucky he was not in London yesterday, when I travelled back and forth on a Great Western train where there was no air conditioning at all. And if I'd taken a rubber plant with me, it would have prospered in what was mid-30s temperatures, that is centigrade, on the train itself. That was wholly unacceptable by Great Western. It's wholly unacceptable for any train company to operate in that way. That's why it's so important that with the new franchises, as they are allocated, that we look not just at frequency, but we also look at the comfort that passengers experience when they're on the trains, in order to make sure that more people use the trains.
Diolch i'r Prif Weinidog. Yr eitem nesaf yn agenda ni o'r datganiad a chyhoeddiad.